Hello and welcome to the Plat podcast. Here we are once again. Myself, Vancer. With me, as always, is Wally.
What's up? How's it going?
It's going all right. We got a bunch of great Rocket League to talk about. This past weekend, we had the European Major, the first stage of it, as well as the North American. We also had the South America, but we're probably not going to talk about that because I didn't watch any of it.
I barely watched any of it. It was pretty. The only thing I'm gonna say, the only thing we'll talk about with it is, they love their ceiling plays and their wall plays
Hmm.
in South America. They only went for those. It was pretty insane. Like Jorby was talking about it in one of the games. He was just like, They really love these walls, and I'm not complaining. It makes it way more exciting because it was just like you wouldn't expect them to be like the heights of what other
Yeah.
RLCS players are at, but I don't think they could beat most of the teams in EU or any. They could though, but the what they were going for was pretty insane. But
Hmm.
that's all I don't remember any of the teams really. I just
Yeah.
know that it was pretty nutty. So if you are really bored and want to go check it out, there would be some nice wall plays and ceiling hits. But other than that, we can definitely just focus on EU and NA.
Okay. So, first thing we had was EU, then the second day was NA. So the plan for today is we're going to talk about the EU Swiss. This is our last time talking about Swiss. For the next split, it'll be a different format. I don't know what the next split will be. I don't even know if that's information we have. But yeah, so the next split will be a totally different style. So I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to talk about the EU Swiss. I'm just going to mention the teams that are going through. We're going to build our perfect EU player, our perfect NA player. Then we're going to go over the North American Swiss, and then we're going to cover a few roster changes that have happened. I actually should probably pull that up. And then we're going to cover our predictions because next week is the biggest weekend we've seen so far this year. Both majors happening, full playoff brackets, single elimination. Top eight for EU and NA. Can't get better than that. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm super pumped for next weekend. I think that'll be so much fun just seeing it just there's so much more on the line as well because each tournament is worth you get $100,000 if you win this thing right here. So
Not to mention double points as well for.
yes, the double points is massive because that just puts you in such a better spot to earn more money later in case you don't perform super well. For this one, it's still you're at least getting in the top eight. So the getting in the top eight was massive for these teams today. Well, this past
Yes.
weekend.
So first thing we've got European Swiss BDS handily making it all the way through as they always do. A three over Triple Trouble, Barca, and Giants. So three strong teams. All of those teams moving on to the playoffs. So BDS is looking in a really strong spot to continue their dominance right now.
Yeah, I thought I didn't even get to see any of their stuff just because of how quickly they got finished with everything. I may have caught the Barca BDS one, but I know I watched more of the Top Blokes one, which they Top Blokes also got through on a 3-0. It was a little scary, I think, for the round three match against Galaxy Racer. They were that first game. I think they lost, and it looked like Galaxy Racer was going to continue their dominance throughout of the day, where they are already just beaten Vitality
Mm-hmm.
in 4 games. But Top Blokes was able to show what they've been able to show us this entire time and go through on a 3-0, and then but Galaxy Racer was able to pull through in round four to move on as well.
Yeah, it's scary to see BDS winning against these strong teams, and then also it's like Galaxy Racers played four incredibly strong teams in Solary, Vitality, Top Blokes, and Oxygen. Like, you know, all of these teams that made it through had to go through some tough opponents. So
Yeah,
every team that has made it to the top eight, I feel like, has definitely been there and had some hard games. Whether or not they won or lost those games, they still were forced to play some strong teams throughout the day. I did catch that BDS Barca series. Um, all you really need is to go watch game one because that's as long as any other sweep would be. It was an 8 minute overtime in game one. And basically the same thing. Everything you see through those 13 minutes is what happened for the next 10 minutes in the next game. Just over and over and over again. The game really didn't feel like it changed pace much throughout. It was BDS playing really strong and holding Barca down, and then Barca eventually breaking out and maybe being able to score. But it was just Barca kind of hanging on for a lot of the series. But um, considering Barca, these were close games with BDS. Sure, they were on the back foot for most of it, but it ended up being a really close series despite being a 3-0. So quite a way to start the day for Barca. Ended up going up against one of the strongest teams. But they managed to recover and make it in on a 3-2. So I was excited to see that.
Yeah,
Um,
you love your Barca
oh yeah,
over there.
I just like watching them play. All three of them are so entertaining, and you'll see that reflected in my ultimate player in a couple minutes here. Um, Teams went out on the 0-3 barrage and Libertas, just getting worked all the way through. Libertas winning a total of 3 games, and barrage only winning 2. So pretty painful. But for those 2 teams, these were teams that the start of the season no one was expecting to make it to the major. Um, and the fact that they made it here and got these double points is huge.
Yeah,
And if they continue to build their
massive.
team going forward, I think they'll have no trouble qualifying for Worlds if they continue to keep playing as well as they are. Um,
I totally agree.
Teams that just missed out, uh, fade away, but I feel like that was a little more predicted. But Guild and Oxygen just missing out on the top 8.
Yeah,
I'm
more
curious.
disappointing for both those teams. The excuse me, I had to
Bless you.
sneeze. The It's just so hard watching Oxygen because you just know that they should be way better than they are, and they just cannot play at that level. And I'm a big Astral fan, and I just feel bad that it's just not working for him at all.
Hmm.
Uh, but I mean, either position he was at, I mean, I don't know. Dignitas isn't really playing that well and stuff like that either. So I don't know what he's gonna do because I feel like the Oxygen experiment isn't really working out.
Yeah, it's rough because you see Astro go from a top 3 finish
A
in
regional champion,
Worlds.
and
Well, yeah,
then
regional champions in season 9, and like I was thinking last time we had Worlds, but yeah, even finished top of EU last season. Was like top 3, top 4 for the Worlds the season before with Dignitas, and he goes somewhere else hoping to have a little more fun. But I feel like it's hard to have fun when you're constantly
never
getting pushed
making
to
it
game
to the play.
5 and
Yep.
constantly losing in round 5. Like I don't think Oxygen has won a single round 5. Every time they've made it through, it's been like clean through, and every time they've lost, they've been like it seems like they get any sort of test and they crumble.
Yeah.
Um,
Both their losses in round 4 and 5 both went to game 5.
yeah. Guild on the other hand, uh, started by going down 0-2, and if you're familiar with Guild, when that happened early in the season, they broke comms. Um, Scrub was issued a warning for joining a call with a streamer, but they came back and still managed to make it in time for playoffs. I assume they didn't leave comms because nothing ever came up today or the other day. Um,
Yeah, I'm not
they get
sure.
their wins against Libertas and Magnifico, but then fall to Barca in round 5, which I think there was just a case of just the better team in my opinion. I feel like Barca's a more consistent, more talented, well-rounded team, and especially the way they were playing that day, being forced to play Oxygen, Dig, BDS, and Vitality. They were much more prepared than Guild, who had played Fadeaway, Triple Trouble, Libertas, and Magnifico. Like Barca just had a much harder schedule, so they were far more prepared for anything Guild had to throw at them.
I agree.
Um, so Guild, the first time not making it to the playoffs, they did it for all 3 um, regional events, but we make it to the major and they just miss out. So that's got to be tough for them. I'm sure they'll bounce back and have hopefully no problems, but you never know what's going on internally with this
Yeah, it's
team.
tough with that team. It was pretty interesting though to watch the little mini interviews because that's what they've been doing during this
Yeah,
stuff, and it was Scrub Killer talking. He's like, yeah, like I think we could beat anybody here," and then they don't even make it to the playoffs. And he said
yeah,
they could challenge for number 1, and it's like the difference between them and Top Lo's vitality and BDS is just so much.
Yeah. Um. If the other, just, I don't have much to say about the other teams making it through. Triple Trouble, uh, Giants, and Point. I get those were all teams that were like Giants. I thought would make it through a little cleaner, but you run into BDS and then a Triple Trouble team that ended up making it through as well. Clearly, you're playing some good competition. Endpoint played really well in their final game against Oxygen. That was it's a lot of fun to watch this Endpoint team evolve because they were that full demo team, full bump team for the longest time. Well, the longest time wasn't that long, honestly. It flew by, and now they've kind of calmed down and are really getting really good at picking their spots. And because of that, they were just able to deal with Oxygen and make it through. And I'm really excited because I feel like that'll add some variety and a little more of like an X factor. Because who knows if they can get hot, you don't even know what teams they could beat. They could potentially beat anyone if their bump and demo game is on point.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's nice to see them like the evolution of how they play. But my favorite was watching Galaxy Racer start playing a lot better. I think they're a fun team to watch. It's like kind of like an underdog type of thing, and I think it's really nice to see them. But I also just love uh, Mark by 8 and BDS. They're just a ton of fun as well.
yeah, and it's hard not to enjoy watching them when they're playing as well as they are right now because it's
Yeah,
just and especially because they're playing as well as they are, we don't get to see them as often, at least in these earlier rounds. So it makes it even more exciting when the playoffs roll around because we get to see more of them and get to see how good they are. Um,
yeah, I agree.
but
But I think that
we
that
can move
covers
on
most
now.
of it.
Yeah.
You
So,
want to talk about our perfect EU
yes,
player?
we can talk about now our perfect EU player. Um,
Do you want to go first, or do you want
I
me to go
already
first?
forgot the order we discussed we were gonna put these in.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Do you want to go piece by piece, or do you want me to name everything? I think we
Let's
should go piece
do.
by piece.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's do piece by piece. So just do whatever's first on your list, and I'll match it.
So for shooting, so we went by for everyone
Oh
listening. We
yeah,
went
read out the
there's
categories.
8 categories. So we have shooting, passing, defense, mechanics, creativity, clutchness, physicality, and personality. So there's 8 different categories. One player per spot. All EU players. My shooting is Ronicky.
Yes, I feel like that goes without saying.
Yeah, it's just what I see is like a lot of these people can make shots way better than me. I'll never be able to be as good as me.
Just a little
But
bit better.
the power he gets on his shots is insane. It's constantly I see Ronicky get a goal, and it's like no surprise. He's always the one usually scoring. But these are all missiles, and it's
Yeah.
insane how fast they're going. He hits it perfectly on that corner of his octane. It is constantly right in the perfect spot. That sweet spot of the most power, and that's why I put him there. I think you agree.
Yeah, and I feel like Ronicky is one of those players too where when he heats up, he's just like unstoppable. He can score from anywhere on the field, whether it's his own end or dunking you on your own goal line. Uh, and so once he gets that first goal, especially if it's a big one, if his teammates get him the ball, like there's like he's just not getting stopped. He can beat 3 defensemen. He can hit an open net. I if I had to pick one shooter in especially in Europe, Ronicky, but honestly in all of Rocket League, Ronicky is he's
Yeah,
probably
that's
top
why
of my
I
list.
agree. I would put him as number one.
Okay.
For passing, I put Alpha 54.
Um, I did not. I actually put Itachi because
Ooh,
Roniky's shooting is so good. We get to see it because Itachi's passing is unbelievable.
I can't disagree with you. I think both are super
Yeah,
crazy. I put
Alpha's
Itachi in a different spot, but I think they're both insane passers.
and I agree. Alpha's also an incredible passer, but I had him in another category as well. I when I was looking at these Barca games over this past weekend, they scored through how many games did they play? They played
19
19
games.
total games. They had 34 goals. 16 of those came from Ronicky, and 11 of them came on assists from Itachi. And many of the other ones, I'd say probably like 5 or 6 of them, came Itachi from Ronicky. So like honestly, both players can do both, and that's also kind of
Yeah,
what's scary about Barca. It's even when Itachi's passing really well to Ronicky, that builds both of their confidence, and then they can just switch it just as quickly, and the other one can score. And then if Devo's getting into the offensive plays or even just playing well defensively, it's it's a hard team to beat at
I
any
agree.
point.
My defense was Itachi. There.
I would have put him there had I not had him for passing. But because of that, I ended up going with Devo.
Ooh, yeah,
Um,
I think it was when I was watching it. It was just like absolutely crazy saves, and they were always
yeah,
Itachi just coming from nowhere to just save it on the goal line. And it's not even just that; he's always just in that perfect spot on defense to challenge players as well as start the next attack. So it just seems like the inclusion of him in that team brings them all together.
yeah,
Um, it's sad that they haven't really been able to beat consistently like a BDS or a Vitality because those are their two losses on the day.
yeah,
But when with how well they're playing, it's like I think one day they definitely could, and it could be next weekend that they get because they start off with BDS next, and BDS sometimes starts off slow. So who knows if they might get lucky on the first round? I don't think they will, but they could, and then that momentum could carry them to a big uh,
yeah,
regional run. Major win or run. Yeah,
yeah. And I mean, yeah, every one of their losses to Vitality, like, granted, they got swept by BDS and Vitality, so that doesn't look good, but every loss to Vitality was by one goal, two of them in overtime. Two of their three losses to BDS were by one goal. One was in an 8-minute overtime. So it's like
yeah. So I know they're
they're
keeping them
this
close.
close to sneaking away to getting a win, and they're just as close on getting wins in any other game they've played against these teams. So if they can start building that confidence, getting these wins, and finding the holes in these teams, they're gonna keep climbing this EU list.
And
Um,
then
I also want to say for defense, I had Devo just because I feel like Devo's been a mainstay for like defensive players, but I was also thinking Flame as well for top blokes. I
yeah,
noticed just
I
Flame
agree that.
is just a rock back there and lets kind of Archie do his thing everywhere else on the field. Um, so Flame was one of those players, but I haven't watched enough of Flame to really to know I could put him in this list. But he's definitely an honorable mention, and then Scrub as well, probably a third place spot because of his 1v1 defense. He's really good at stalling time for his own teammates to get back, whether or not it's like goal line defense, but he's really good at buying time as well. Um, so he's kind of an honorable mention as well.
I agree. I get it. All of those make perfect sense. I put Astral as my mechanics player.
This is where I put Alpha. I
I
felt
felt like they're both super good
yes.
mechanically, but it's like what Astral can do. I just feel like he can do just slightly more than what Alpha can.
I
I
think
think.
I think I agree. I just have Astral in another spot, which
Ooh,
is why
exciting.
which is
He's probably
why
the next
at this
one,
point,
but
yeah, which is why at this point I went with Alpha because I was like, with Alpha's mechanics, he can do the shooting and the passing. Um, but I know where he is kind of close to Astral with mechanics. I feel like in this next category, Astral is just one of the best in it.
yeah.
So
And so the next category is creativity, and that's
yeah,
where I put Archie.
that's where and that's where I had Astral.
I think I wanted to I didn't want to overdo the Barca players and then
Yeah,
at the beginning like you did, but I felt like mechanics in just itself, I think Astral is just the best one. And then creativity, I felt like Archie belonged on this for me, and I think it's he has to do a lot for that team. That team is so good, the three of them, of Cassio, Flame, and Archie. But the what he's able to do for that offense that sometimes can get a little stuck sometimes if they're not playing on their game.
yeah.
He's like what can unlock a lot of stuff. So I felt like the creativity that he's able to create is a lot. So
He
that's why.
he was I think my like one of my first people I thought of when I thought of passing as well. I feel like anytime
Yeah,
they're playing well is when Archie's making infield passes to Cassio or to Flame. And I think that's where that creativity comes from. He's able to make the infield passes as well as score. And I think the only reason I ended up putting Itachi was because he just does more passing than Archie does. And I think that's probably why I have Roniki, Itachi, and Devo all on this list. It's because they all play their own specific roles so frequently. It makes it hard to notice a time when they're not playing those roles. But yeah, Archie,
I agree.
I I desperately wanted to find a spot for on this list, but I couldn't. just because of where other players end up popping up. But I definitely agree um,
Yeah.
with how creative Archie is.
So then the clutchness, I put Fairy Peak.
Okay.
I felt like whenever I see, uh, I felt like it was Fairy or K-Dop. I felt like I could switch them out, but I felt like there's a lot of times when it's like, even though Alpha creates a lot of it, I think Fairy grows into that role just because of his experience a lot with it, and he's just like able to really show his top talent specifically there in the big moments. I always felt like.
Yeah.
What did you put there?
Um, they for clutchness, I went. It was a real toss up. Honestly, any player from BDS can slide into here. I've seen games where because right now BDS is the team that has ended up in the most important games just because they've played in all three finals um, for their regional events. And I guess if I like immediately came to mind was extra simply because I know there was a couple games where he like single handedly had like the only goals to win them the game. But then I feel like he doesn't do like maybe I'm only thinking that because Mark scores so much, it's hard to find when he's clutch because he's just good all the time. And because of that, I just went right down the middle and went with Monkey Moon. Um, Monkey Moon
I can go with that.
in one of their biggest series, which was against Vitality, in one of the semifinals for one of the regionals. Um, they were, I think it was, they got a reverse sweep or something. They were like down in the series. Monkey Moon had like two or three big goals in one game, which won them that game, and then they immediately turned the series around and won it. So honestly, clutchness anyone on BDS because they're just so good. But if I had to pick one, it'd be probably Monkey Moon.
And then I think I didn't get to put any BS players on here, but I think it was just that they're so good and well rounded, all three of them, that I didn't really put them in one specific spot. I think
Yeah.
that's how I kind of viewed it. But they are so good, the three of them, just individually and as a team. But then for physicality, which is the next category, I put Virtuoso.
Yep.
I think you also did.
Yes.
I think anyone would. It's just like, even though he's not doing it as much of going only for bumps, it's still that he's so good at that, and it's just something that he has in his repertoire, and he's so good at it.
Also for Virtuoso, it's one of those things as well where it's like if the other team knows you're capable of going for these bumps and demos, they're going to be looking out for you, which is taking their attention away from the ball. Even if you're not there, they're afraid you could be. So just the idea of Virtuoso being on the pitch with you gives Endpoint an advantage. So his physicality works even when he's not being physical, which I think is what makes him so good at it.
I agree. I think the even though he's like, and he's still so good at it when they know he's coming for him.
Yeah.
Like, it's you're just like, all right, Virtuoso is going to kill me repeatedly in this game, and he still gets like 4 or 5 demos, and it's that lead to relating wave or Metsonar goals. So it's pretty insane how good he is at it. Uh,
And then who do you
but
have for personality?
for personality, I put Zamway.
Zamway, interesting. Any?
Uh,
Oh,
the
okay. I
main
think I know
is
why.
because that one big story where he lives with Mark by 8,
Yeah.
and then whenever they play, they always joke about it. And the one story was, I think I brought it up on here, where if they were gonna play, and if he dunked Mark by 8, he was gonna run over to his room on the other side of the house and yell, "What a save! What a save! What a save!" and then run all the way back to his room. So I just thought that was hilarious. There's a lot of players that could kind of fit in there. I thought Astra was a funny personality just because of how mean he can kind of be. Uh, I think who else? I think Scrub's pretty funny at times. I think he's just so stupid a lot. You could put Jesse there. Jesse's a
Oh God.
personality. uh, what else? I think Metz is pretty funny. We had that one video where he's like sneezing a ton, and then he just randomly pops up to go to the moon for
Sneezing is part of his personality.
yeah. And then, but yeah, I think that's who I thought would be the funniest. I thought they were pretty funny.
For me, I went a little more serious for my European player, just because I wanted him on this list, and I felt like this is a great way to kind of
I know
play
who
him
this
in.
is. Yep.
Who do you think it is?
It's probably Violent Panda.
No, it's I had Panda for my other category. They ended up taking out. Nah, this is he was definitely in the running for this, but I ended up going with Fairy. Because
He's
Fair
pretty entertaining.
Fairy's one of those players where it seems, and he ends up in interviews a lot, and I like kind of the demeanor he brings. He brings confidence without arrogance, and I
I
assume
agree.
in comms he's a player that's, he's played in all these high pressure games. He knows how to keep his team in the game. He knows how to keep it calm, and he's just so competitive. Like if he's beating you by 10 in a ones game, he won't try to style on you. He just plays the same way the whole way through, giving his opponents the same respect, whether it's 0-0 or 10-0 for either score line. Um, so I think he's just what like a strong competitor, and I hope to see more players like him kind of popping up and showing some like maturity in the scene where it's like
I agree.
you know. But I went a little less serious for my North American player just because I and speaking of which, do you want to hop on over to North America then? Talk about
Yeah, we can talk about
our
the
perfect
regional
North
one.
American player.
So this perfect NA player, I think the same order of the categories. So for shooting, I put Typical.
Okay.
I felt like he, it's the same type of thing. I don't think he's as good as Ronicky, but I think I put a lot of different players in a lot of different spots, so I couldn't really fit.
Yeah.
I think Typical's so good, and I think he didn't really fit somewhere else, but I didn't think anyone else who would fit into shooting I already put in spots. So it's just consistently that he can bring a lot of the offense for SSG, and they're so good. I think Arsenal does a lot of that, and Reddles is more of a physical player in my mind. So I
Mm-hmm.
think he brings a lot of that shooting aspect, and the types of shots he can hit are there's a ton of them. So I just felt like his shooting ability was deserved to be up there.
For me, I typical was I think probably my number two, but for the same reason I have Ronicky on here, I have J Naps. He can hit shots from anywhere, and when he's hot, he's hot. You just can't stop him when he's playing well. Um, and especially now that G2 is implementing more and more bumps into Chicago, and Rizzo honestly starting to pull back on him a little bit. But that just means there's one more person to watch out for, which gives Janab some more space in the net to shoot. I'd say he's up there for me with like nearing Ronicky, but Jnaps is just at one time he was considered like one of the best players, if not the best player in Rocket League. Um, and we still get to see shades of that when he's popping off. And I feel like he has a little more mechanics than Ronicky, so he can pull off some of those flashier goals. Not quite as flashy as Sipical, but I feel like he's more reliable than Sipical can be in terms of shooting. But
Dude, I forgot J Nash was a person.
so
Dude,
you don't have him on the list at all. Then it sounds like.
no, I forgot he was a person.
Wow.
Oh, right as you said, I was like, oh, he's probably better for that. I think they're both really good, and I agree with
Yeah.
you that the type of shots. I think you could definitely put either of them. I kind of like Sipical a little bit more, just in general, just
Yeah.
watching him. But uh, yeah, the totally forgot he was a person. I have a G2 player on here, and I just was like, I was looking at these teams. I was like, because I'm looking at the Swiss stage to see who made it, because I was like, those would be the best players, and I was like, all right, I think shooting could be Sipical, and then I looked at G2, and I was like, Rizzo's a player, and then that's about. And I'm like, Chicago's fine, but and I totally just didn't think of their third player,
That's the disrespect on JNaps, honestly.
honestly. So that's pretty good.
uh,
But I can definitely get behind that. I think the two of them both deserve to be up
yes.
there. So for passing, we'll just move on to passing
Yeah.
because we can move past my embarrassment there. Gyro is who I put there.
Oh, okay.
That might be a little interesting. Whenever I watch the peeps, I can't tell if they deserve to be like considered near the Envy's space stations, G2s, and NRGs. I don't know if they deserve to be close enough to there or they deserve to be lower. But I know they're better than a Rogue in my opinion.
Yeah.
But watching him play, it's just like he's able to do almost everything for that team, and it's constantly him just coming on the sidewall and he drops the ball perfectly down in the middle for one of his teammates that just sends it in. it was just something I was noticing over the weekend watching the Peeps, and I watched him play in the grid a few times, and it's constantly him just dropping this perfect ball down onto someone's hood. So it was a little bit of a different shout out. So I think your
I like
player
it.
will be also super good, but I think I wanted to put a Peeps player on here.
Yeah, I like being able to to dig into some other teams, and I did a similar thing for passing, but then I thought of Squishy. So
Yep.
my passing player is Squishy, but like it, I wanted to put someone else just because I feel like for a lot of these picks we end up just going like Squishy's good at everything. He's better at passing than a couple of these other players, so I'll slide him into passing. But some player that excels at passing more than a lot of his other things, where it might be like deceiving how good he is at passing is Rapid for Kansas
I
City,
agree. Yeah.
and I feel like in a similar way to Gyro, but like Rapid can he. It's not always about hitting your teammate. Rapid is good about hitting space and having his teammates come into that space. Like Rapid's good at beating defensemen with his touches and then having his team come in to where he sets the ball and I think that's a really interesting way to look at passing as opposed to, just trying to hit it on someone's hood. And I like it's rapid is a big part of what makes Kansas City as good as they are, because they thrive on that chaos in front of the other team net, in front of the other team's net. And so if he
Yeah.
can get up to a ball and make an awkward touch and make it hard for the defenseman to get a hard clear, if that ball's sitting in front, he has two teammates just ready to pounce on it in memory and in beast mode. Who beast mode is definitely a strong player, and memory this past week his shooting was excellent. Um, so if they can keep up shooting the way they're shooting and rapid gives them those opportunities, I so desperately wanted to put in rapid here for those reasons, but like at the same
Squishy
time
is
it's
so
squishy
good.
and it makes squishy look even better because he has Justin shooting all of those passes.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and then oh no, defense is next. Okay, so I'll get to Justin because he's later on in this list.
Yeah, he's a little bit later. For defense, I put Rizzo.
Okay.
I think he he's expanding out a little bit more than just sitting all the way back, and they keep talking about him wanting to get more goals and stuff like that. But I still just feel like his ability on defense is and his physicality, and it's not just physicality, but I think his defense in general. Like G2's been like a little suspect at defense at times, but I think at least lately they've really pulled it back together since the beginning, especially when they got into the team house. So his defense, I just wanted to commend there.
For me, I went with first killer. I know Rogue's defense has also been kind of shoddy, but I feel like first killer is still an incredibly good defenseman in terms of
Yes,
he has the mechanics, he has the much like Scrub, he has that one's ability to buy time for his other players. So even if he's not specifically saving the ball, he's buying time for his teammates to get back. He's good at coming off the backboard, um, and like he's good at because of his one's practice. He's good at reading other cars and learning kind of how the ball is going to move and who it might go to next. So his and it also works on his poise in the net. Like you rarely see him like pre-jumping like way too early, and someone just like
yeah,
he's rarely the player on Rogue getting his ankles broken in front of the net.
I
So
agree.
he's up there for me, even if it can be kind of shoddy at times for Rogue's defense. I think he still is
Yeah, I
good.
don't think it's ever really his fault either. I think it's
Exactly.
like someone has a breakdown and then he has to kind of cover a lot for it. And
Yeah.
he is able to make absolutely insane saves, and his mechanical ability is super high. I put him in a different spot, so that's why I didn't slap him in for defense.
And I feel like similar to why you have Rizzo in there for G2, both of these teams end up getting scored on because of what's happening in the other half of the field as opposed to their half of the field.
Agreed.
Like if these players are on defense, they're good at defense, but if they're caught upfield, obviously that's going to hurt them. But I'm thinking specifically kind of in their half of the field. So
Yeah, exactly. But moving on to mechanics, I'm gonna hope that you put what I put, and I'm gonna put Justin
yeah,
there.
yeah, without a
Um,
doubt.
he's just the best mechanical player in the world.
I
Like
don't know,
he's so
dude.
good at
Alpha
every.
and Astral are so good too. Like I think
I
they're
think
all
he's just.
even.
I would put him above the two of them, but I definitely think that Alpha and Astral are also Alpha Astral Justin, First Killer are my top four
Okay.
mechanical players in the world. But Justin is it's just insane what he can do. And it's like you continue to he's been around for so long, but he continues to just do stuff that you would never like think should be happening.
Yeah.
And there isn't much else to say about it. It's just insane.
Yeah, and with those mechanics, like that brings in his passing and his shooting. Like if your mechanics is up, chances are you're good at a lot of other things, and that just helps your mechanics show even more. And like I said, that's because of Justin is a big reason why Squishy ended up being like my passer. Um, but it's just because Justin's that
Yeah.
good.
Uh, and then for creativity, I put First Killer.
I like it. I went with
Uh,
Arsenal.
Interesting, and I totally can get behind that. I put Arsenal in a different spot
I
prior
want
to
to hear
me.
your if you have any extra thoughts on First Killer or if it's
First Killer, it's like I'm I'm I like watching Rogue a lot, and it's like the team that I kind of gravitate towards. I don't really feel like it's like I think it's tough to really like a full team for a long time, and unless you have a real connection with the org or something. But it's like you start liking players for a little bit, and then you just start watching them a little bit more, and then you might jump to something else. But I feel like it's just different than regular sports or whatever. But watching him, it's you'd think he'll just go up for an aerial there or a wall touch there and it goes over to something like that and then he puts it in or doesn't. But he's like, Turntro chucks it in the middle and he's on the back corner and he's just like, I got 100 boost. I can get there. He just hits it up. He gets a ceiling reset and then he just comes down and Pogo sticks it in. And it's like
yeah,
insane what his mind is thinking when he goes for things, and mechanically he's able to do all those things, and as well as his mind just thinks it's possible in that
yeah,
moment, and then he pulls off so many of them. So you just have to really just love what he's doing. But I'm definitely your Arsenal hit, like your shout out for
yeah.
him, especially recently. I can definitely get behind it. I'll let you talk more about it, but I can see what you're talking about as well.
Yeah, Arsenal can definitely be kind of like non-existent if he's quiet, and if Sipical and Reddles are playing well, you kind of won't see him. But when Arsenal's popping off, he's the center of attention for all teams that week. Like he'll, I think it was in one of the grids, he made a play where he made, I think it was like all of E United just look dumb. Like he just
Yeah,
sat there
yep,
and
I
let a
know the
player
one.
blow by him, went up for an air dribble and like just stopped the ball and let it drop underneath the like two players. Like he can do so many little fakes on the ground, and I think that's what makes him such a creative player. Is just the idea of you don't know what he's going to do next. He can pass the ball off and then just go and run through the goalie because he's also got that physical presence as well. Like he at any if he's playing well at any moment, he could take the ball anywhere. We've seen him pulling off musties. We've seen him pulling off ceiling shots. We've seen him like even this past week. I just saw a weird ball that was coming towards him, and at first it looked like a double commit, but I assume he called off. I think it was Reddles told him to slow down. He's like, I'm gonna tap this to you. Did some sort of weird backflip just to tap it ever so slightly to the inside to get it to Reddles, and he put a banger. And like out of nowhere, like he can turn plays that look like are broken plays into goals for his team, and I think that's like huge for a team that has three strong players in space in that Space Station has.
I agree. I think it's like I know exactly the play you're talking about in that grid where he just like made them all
Yeah.
look like a bunch of fools. Uh, Clutchness, I put Garrett G.
Okay.
I'm whenever NRG is on the main channel, which is pretty rare. They sometimes get into some tough OTs and stuff, and they if it's a strong opponent, and it's constantly you're expecting Justin or Squishy to be the one who scores that goal, and then Garrett constantly I feel like is the one who's tap putting it in. It's not just tap ins, but he's just shooting it in, perfect shot, perfect angle, and he just wins the game for him right then and there. It's not like he's the most flashy about it, but he doesn't really need to be. So I just feel like his clutchness in a lot of games comes down to his ability to he's like
Calm under
sitting back for
pressure.
part of it, and then he gets a lot of the crucial hits.
Okay. I felt like the obvious choice was Turbo because Turbo
Yeah,
wins
I
everything he's
agree.
in. Much like Violent Panda, I had him for my other category that we ended up ditching. And in doing so, I felt like I should put him back in, but I felt like that was such an obvious choice. And I feel like sure Turbo wins everything, but I feel like it's not always him scoring. On a lot of instances, it is. But I feel like Turbo is only really clutch in the playoffs. Granted, that's where you need him, but I feel like a player that shows up in the clutch time and time again is Reddles. He's
I agree.
constantly talking a big game, and I'm waiting for the moment for that to bite him, and it doesn't come. Like he'll play against he in one of the biggest games when he first came to SSG was against the Peeps, his former roster. They take him to Game 7. He's the only person to score in the game. I feel like he's always
Yeah,
scoring really big goals in really critical games for this team. I feel like he's getting these big plays when they matter, and also doing them when they when you don't even know if they matter yet. Like he'll get a couple points like early in the series, and then towards the end of the series you go, wow, the way he played in games 1 and 2 really helped us start this series so that way we could finish it by the end of it. Like he ends up showing up in games that you don't realize are important until the series ends, and I think that's why I had him in here over Turbo.
yeah. I put Turbo in a different spot, but I was really going back and forth about it. I think I had Turbo in clutchness, but then I was like, who do I put for physicality? And I couldn't really think of anyone
Mm-hmm.
like off the top of my head.
Yeah,
So that's where I put Turbo. I moved Turbo down to physicality, and then I remembered all the shots that Garrett G had been putting in for NRG. But I'm definitely with the Reynolds thing as well. He's constantly coming up in those big moments as well. But I just said it for physicality. I put Turbo. I think the Envy's team in general is the most physical team with SSG in NA, in my opinion.
okay.
And I think he leads a lot of that with his prowess, and I think he's just so good, especially when he changes his cars all the time, just because he can, and then the different cars get different force. I feel like,
And I feel like with each new car is a different iteration of Turbo, and with each one he plays slightly differently. So you never it's always interesting to see what he'll pull out in each car. For me, my physicality, um, a big part of it is because it's not super known yet, and it's sort of just been on the rise. Is Chicago? I noticed
yeah,
Rizzo's been pulling off his bump game a little bit, but Chicago's been picking his up a ton, and not a lot of people know that yet. So it's a great way to get a surprise. A lot of the people I was had in here as well were like Arsenal and Reddles, but again, already have those people somewhere.
yeah,
Um, I had a couple others in mind, but I think I went with Chicago just because, like in this past weekend as well, there were many goals where he was just harassing someone on the goal line, like just getting multiple bumps on the same or on multiple players that directly led to goals. Um, and I went with Chicago there, but there's a few players in North America that you can kind of slide in there. They're all pretty similar, but I think Chicago's is a little more unexpected, which is I think why I had him in there.
I agree. I think I not that I agree because I put someone else, but I think I
Yeah,
can see
you
why
can
you would put
understand it.
Chicago. Yeah. So for personality, I put Arsenal.
I like it.
I think he's just super funny. I was watching his streams a few times lately. I think he's just super entertaining. They talk about his relationship with Reddles. There's always a ton of videos from previous years where he's joking about with a whole group of other people as well. I think he's just a super funny guy who's enjoying what he's doing. I think, especially with the rise of how good SSG is right now,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of fun just watching him and what he does on the field as well, where he's able to express himself a lot when he does those crazy plays. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's one thing I didn't even really think about is I feel like Arsenal is the most like personality driven player on the field outside like maybe Turbo as well just because of all the Turbo goals he scores that just have no explanation other than it was Turbo doing it. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I know like you can always tell when Arsenal's having a good day because of the way he's playing. Um, for me, I this one was sort of kind of a toss up. Um, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go with a serious answer similar to North America or similar
hmm.
to EU, um, or what. I ended up going Rizzo, which I feel like is a super cop out answer because everyone likes Rizzo. But I feel like he's a veteran presence. He's been around for ages. He's in a G2 team where they're in team house, and camaraderie and like communication is incredibly important. And it seems like he's able to keep light of probably whenever they're playing poorly. I feel like he's one of those players that can kind of keep the mood light, which is incredibly important for a sport with a lot of young players that could come in as young as like 15, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so he's one of those players, as well as he's like one of the biggest players outside of the professional sporting, like outside of the professional games, like his streams and stuff like that. So he's a person who's able to bring in viewers through his streams and get more people into Rocket League as a whole. So I gotta go Rizzo, even though I feel like it could totally be a cop out answer.
But I can totally, yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's an answer that's deserved to be talked about. Where he is, he just honestly is just so exciting to, not just exciting, just fun to. It seems like a guy that would just be so much fun to play with all the time.
yeah. Um, and I think that's everything. I'm trying
Yeah,
to think if
that's
we
it.
had anyone. Did we have we? I think our only matches were Ronicky and Virtuoso. Is that right?
I believe so. We had Justin for
Oh
mechanics.
yeah, and Justin for mechanics. Um, that's awesome. Honestly, I figured a lot of it we would. Obviously, we end up agreeing on a lot of things, but I figured we'd have almost exactly the same list, and I'm really glad we don't actually.
Yeah, I'm glad too, because then it makes it more exciting to see what the two of us view on stuff.
It definitely made this segment a lot longer. But that's okay
Yep.
because we don't have the grid to talk about, so this can fill in all that grid time. And hopefully this is something the no viewers enjoyed. Um, I know I enjoyed talking about it. This is something I just thought of the other day, so I was like, oh, let's throw this together and talk about it. Um, so it is a lot of fun. I like. I think these are my favorite kind of parts to do of the show, where it's just like talking like not breaking down any statistics or anything, just talking about the players and kind of what we think of them and it's a nice way to gauge kind of you know how it finds some underrated players and find the players who are performing so well and what makes them perform so well. Um, so I liked it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so did I.
Um, so that being said, that was our North American um, dream players. That being said, let's move to the North American Swiss for this past weekend, and I'll let you go right into that.
So the NA Swiss stage, right off the bat, we got NRG and G2 going in on a 3-0. I didn't even get to watch any of their games because they were done so quickly.
I don't even think they. I think they played the
I think that
Sonics. They played the
G2,
Sonics on the second channel, and I think that was the
I
only
think
game they
the
had
G2
streamed.
E United one might have been on the main channel,
Yeah. Yes.
maybe. But I just know that I didn't get to see it because I
Yeah.
think I was watching football. So, but the them two, it's no surprise that they're making it through, and not even surprised that they're making it on a 3-0. The Their ability is super high. They're both playing super well at the moment. They both played. I don't think the competition they played was super out of this world. I feel like
Yeah.
none of those teams were teams that were in the top four. So
Definitely not top
Sonics
four.
were a little Sonics were a surprise of the day, but
Yes.
they I don't think that there should have been a question that those two teams should have beaten the competition that they
Yeah.
had. But next up, like below that, I think SSG losing to Alpine was a little bit of a shock, but both ended up going in on a 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alpine's a little bit of a shock that they were the fourth highest team on here to make it through. Them beating SSG's big sweeping
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Knights when that's usually a team that they're always battling at the end with. For them to make it through that early, a lot of confidence going into the playoffs. I think for them. United beating Envy, interesting right there, because that could have been a real kickstart for United's day, but they were a team that didn't make it through. They were one of the ones that's barely missed out.
Yeah. That first round was very surprising to say the least.
Yeah,
You got Alpine Knights, which is seems like they always play in round five. So now we got to see it. They either play in round one or round five. It seems like they're constantly playing each other. And this was a sweep. So Alpine's really starting to set their dominance over the Knights as we see them beat the Knights more and more, and now they're doing
yep.
it more convincingly. Um, You see Rogue get swept by XSET. You see Peeps get swept by Sonics. You see Envy lose to E United. All three of those teams made it to the playoffs and lost to teams that didn't make the playoffs. In fact, the three teams that lost were the last three to miss out. Those were the teams that went to round five. Um, so it was a really shocking first round, and because of that loss to E United, it pushed Envy. I guess they weren't pushed down to fifth because them and Alpine both tied for fourth because their game differential was both +4. Um, but I mean, I guess you could argue Alpine beat E United when Envy couldn't, so that's probably why they're the higher number four. Just looking at this list. But yeah, it was also funny to see Xset sweeping Rogue in the first series and then getting swept by Kansas City in the fifth round. Um, and then the same thing for for the Sonics. They sweep the Peeps and then go to the fifth round and get swept by Rogue. Like these teams that started really strong and surprises at the beginning of the day ended up faltering big time. Sonics especially. A sweep over Peeps and KCP. Like those are two pretty
Massive
like
teams.
pretty well established teams as of like this season. They've really solidified themselves in the top 5, 8 range, and you
I
sweep
agree.
both of them. But then you run into NRG, who they honestly they could have taken that series. They went to game five, um, and then you get the misfortune of running into Space Station in round four, because somehow they didn't make it through on a 3-0, and then you bump into Rogue, um, who was just I think the better team in round five.
I agree. Yeah, the Rogue just dominated them that series.
Yeah,
I think game three was a little closer and it was a little bit tighter between the two of them, but Rogue was just, it would be really back and forth, and then Rogue shut it down at the end. But the teams that made it through, as we've hinted and mentioned at least a few times, we got NRG, G2, SSG, Alpine, Envy, KCP, Rogue, and the Peeps. And I
mm-hmm.
think you and I can both agree that going in, that all of those teams except Alpine were expected to make it through. Um, they might, Rogue is always an iffy one. Peeps can sometimes slip up, but I think those are the teams that we think are deserve to be top eight.
Yeah,
Um, and I think Alpine deserves to be there, but I think there's always the iffiness of between them, Sonics, E United, Exit, and Pittsburgh Knights. Like if any of those switched with Alpine, I wouldn't have been like shocked out of this like
yeah,
out of my seat. But I think Alpine, based on how they played, definitely deserved to make it through. But I think the biggest shock I think was Shock playing
yeah.
and them playing a lot better with him in the lineup. But other than that, I didn't think there was much like super big surprise.
Uh, I think
Besides
it's
like specific matchups, I think like Rogue not beating like what you just talked about, where
I,
KCP and the Peeps get swept by Sonics. I think there were slight matchups that were interesting in how they turned out, but I think the teams that made it through deserve to go through.
yeah. I think if you told me to pick 8 teams to make it into the playoffs, those would have been the 8 that I picked, for sure. Um, you say Alpine was kind of iffy, but I mean, sure they can play. They always seem to be a team that gets in on the round five, but at the same time, Alpine made it to the first 2 regional events, um, or like the regional event like playoff bracket. They made it to top 8, and the only reason they missed out, I think they got like ninth or 10th in regional event 3, and the only reason is because Magic Bear was in the hospital for like 2 weeks, and they didn't get to practice together at all before that regional event, and they still finished like ninth. So Alpine's an excellent team. I would have I would have felt it was maybe disappointing if they didn't get to the top 8, but it wouldn't, you know, I don't know. It would be, I feel like a disappointing end, but not a shocking end. Whereas I feel
Okay.
like Sonics, United, XSET, and Pittsburgh Knights hitting that 9 through 12 spot were like, that makes sense because of the way they've been playing like recently. I feel like those are strong spots and really good to solidify their place in the standings. But I feel like the best 8 teams did move on for North America.
I agree. I definitely agree with you on that.
Um,
for sure.
anything
That the
else?
best teams made it through.
Anything else for the Swiss? I think that's everything I've got to say.
That's all I got. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm just looking at X sets. I'm just looking through to see if any games. X set had the hardest schedule. I'm gonna say that looks
Yeah.
horrific.
That's.
Playing Rogue,
Well, I think
NRG,
Sonic's
Peeps,
also.
Envy, KCP. Sonics, Peeps, KC. Yeah, I guess it's like the same thing almost.
Well,
Actually,
Sonic
who?
swapped SSG for Envy.
SSG friend. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the two teams that that's brutal for those two teams, just missing out, and those are the five you had to play. So to be expected, they fought as good as they could against those top teams. But again, that shows like the difference between those top eight, or I guess more so the top four, and then the next four, and then the 9 through 12 range. Like there's, I feel like a big gap between each set of four teams, and these results kind of show that.
I
Um,
agree.
so I guess we can go into predictions now. Is that all that's left?
Yeah, I think that's all that's left.
Okay. Do you want to tackle North America since we're here? I guess.
Yeah, I think for North America, I feel like my final will be. I think NRG gets out from the top.
Okay.
I think they'll beat Envy and get through. And then I think they'll play. I think they'll play G2, and then I
Okay.
predicted G2 to win it. So
Yeah, you did
last week.
predict. Okay, so you're saying G2 NRG in the finals, G2 to win it.
Yep.
So that means you have. It sounds like you said NRG over Peeps, Envy over Alpine, but NRG over Envy, G2 over Rogue, and then who do you think is going between Space
SSG.
Station? Okay, so
SSG.
SSG beating KCP. I'll just run through the list here. So we got NRG versus Peeps, Envy versus Alpine in the top half of the bracket, and then the bottom half of the bracket we got G2 versus Rogue, and then Space Station versus KCP. So your list is going SSG, G2, Envy, NRG, and then NRG, G2, and then G2 in the final.
Yep.
That definitely seems like the safest route, and I'm probably going the same way. Um, it's. I feel like if Space Station is going to beat KCP, I think they're going to make it to the final because KCP is a pretty fast team, and G2 similarly. The same reason why Envy was able to beat G2 after beating KCP. I feel like the same reason why Space Station will be able to beat them. Because I feel like KCP is a way better warm up than Rogue is. Because if Rogue isn't on the top of their game, that's a series that G2 should easily win.
Yeah.
So I feel like they won't be as prepared, especially for someone as good as Space Station following. Um, so I think I have Space Station and NRG in the final. And my prediction last week was having NRG win. I guess I'll stick to my guns and I'll say NRG Space Station in the final with NRG winning it. And everything outside of that, NV and G2 also making it to the semis.
Yeah, you gotta make sure you stick to your guns, bro.
Yeah, always stick to your guns, kids. That's the only way you get places is just stand by what you said. And if you're
Yeah.
wrong, just dig your heels into the sand. That's what I've been known for. And now we
So
can
then,
we can pop back over to Europe.
yeah, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
You can go first again.
Do you remember who I said to win for this? I'm gonna assume
I
I said
assume we
BDS.
all said BDS.
Yeah, I think BDS will definitely make it through on the top. It'll be iffy if they can get through Barca. I think they definitely can beat Galaxy Racer. Who I think they'll win.
Mhm.
I think it'll be BDS Galaxy Racer for the top half, and I think BDS will beat Galaxy Racer to make it to the final.
Okay.
I think Top Los will beat Endpoint, and then I think Vitality will beat Giants. I
Okay.
would love to see Top Logs beat Vitality because I want them to be. I like them, but so I'm gonna go for it. Yeah, why not? I think Top Logs BDS in the final, and then I think that'd be absolutely insane matchup. But I think BDS is better, so then they'll make it through and win it and win the first major for EU.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's got to be Vitality BDS in the final. I don't want to pick that because I feel like that's the super easy answer. But I mean, you just look at any of the regional results. The winner of Vitality BDS wins every regional, and the only way for them to play each other is in the final. So they're gonna make it there. I say I have top looks over Endpoint, and Galaxy Races over Triple Trouble as well. Um, I feel like if Barca can beat BDS, which is a huge if here, I'd have them going to the finals as well. Um, but I think BDS is just too good.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'd say BDS and Vitality in the finals, and I guess BDS in BDS in six.
6.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if Energy Space Station, I might go on a surprise here and say I'm gonna say Energy in five. I think they're gonna just blow through Space Station. I'm
I think
just
it'd be G2 and 7.
see. I wanted to say seven, but I'm like, nah. I'm gonna go wild with it. If Energy's playing well, I think they can do it in five. So those are our predictions. Hold us to those. Um, oh, we had subs as well. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. So I guess we can do that now. Um, so there were a couple roster changes. Now that a lot of teams are out before the next split starts. One thing that's actually currently affecting, well, actually not anymore, did affect last week was Shock coming back into the lineup for Sonics in place of Sathy. So now it was Roldiz, Shock, and J Russ. That made that team instantly better. I was surprised that Shock was the one they benched in the first place, but it is what it is. And clearly the results there showed why that was, why they made the wrong choice. But hopefully Sonics can sort all that out. In terms of everything else that happened, there were quite a few moves, like kind of just around. I don't know how to word that. There were quite a few moves that happened with players leaving orgs or getting kicked from orgs. First of all is Wonder off of 72 PC. So now they need to find a third for them. Three players getting kicked, all then going and creating their own team, and I'll mention that in a moment. Um, Two of those players being Buddy from Nefarious, and Noxus from Down to Earth. And I think the other one was Pirates, and I'm trying to remember when that team disbanded. That was a little longer ago at this point. Um, yeah, that was Adept, Spider, Com, and Pirates, all like just disbanded and
Yeah,
completely
they
split the
broke
group.
up, yeah.
Yeah, they split a while ago, but we never talked about it. But now, Pirates has found a new roster alongside those two. So I'm very excited to see how that team plays under Timberwolves. That team was formed just recently. So
Ooh, were they in Minnesota?
um, we also have an OCE. Wouldn't mention this if it wasn't a pretty big team in Hazard. We were just talking about, like, again, an OCE leagues we don't really talk about, but this was a team we brought up a little bit during their stint in the limelight here at the Plat Rats podcast. Uh, Schmoopernator gone. Negative and Cyrexel are gone as well, but they at least stay together, and they're now under a team name that's just X Hazard, so it's just a placeholder, I assume, for when they create a team. So now Schmoopernator on the open market for OCE, and the new Hazard roster looking for a third, so that could mix some stuff up there. Apparently Jack getting benched for Rick's GG. Apparently that was some like internal thing, like a personal conflict. So we'll have to see kind of how that pans out. KCP has dropped Seabass, so they're now looking for their new sub. I guess at some point, or they'll probably just leave that space vacant until they find a need for another player. And I think that about does it. The Timberwolves form, I mentioned that already with Noxus, Buddy, Pirates. Look forward to that team coming up just because brand new roster, honeymoon phase. They could be a lot of fun to watch, see how that team works out. And Ole, Oli, I don't know how to pronounce his name, from Barrage. So Barrage, I think he was just benched as well. So he's still on the team. But Barrage played way above expectations, but then they bench a player. So I don't have a whole lot of info on that one. It could be internal. It could be they're looking to upgrade their team for the next split. So quite a few moves already, and we're not even at the end of the first split. So there'll be even more probably um, soon, which we'll probably get into when they happen. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on any of these. There's not a whole lot to say because they're all smaller moves, but
Yeah, not too much. I think the apparently Jack one will be interesting to see. I was reading, it's all just a rumor, but there was talks that Dignitas's roster and the org like in charge of that will be is in question, I guess. Not sure what's going to happen with that roster because they've been kind of underperforming this year. So it's interesting if they'll snatch up like I was talking to you about it during the week. It'd be like insane if they dropped their roster and then picked up the top blokes roster.
yeah,
That'd be insane, but who knows? But I think the apparently Jack one's the most interesting for me because I just like him a lot. But
yeah.
I don't know enough about the information, like enough about the situation.
So that's everything, I guess, for the roster moves. Um, we're going to cover, you know, as many as they come out. We'll try and cover them in the weeks they happen. If we miss them, chances are we'll get them in the next one. Um, but that I think is everything for today. Um, Next week we're covering the major playoffs for both North America and Europe. So those are going to be huge. So I doubt we'll talk about anything else other than just breaking it down kind of series by series. So that one will probably that one will either be really long or really short, depending on if we have a lot to say or nothing to say. If it goes according to plan, there probably won't be much to say. But if there's a couple hiccups in the road, I'll be very excited to talk about them because you never know. Um, so that'll be it for the Plat Rap podcast for this week. Wally, thanks for joining me as always.
Thanks for having me.
And I guess this is goodbye for now. We'll see you next week.
Bye.